Discerning Hearts presents In Search of the Still Point with Dr. Regis Martin. In episode 22, Dr. Martin reflects on Destined to dart about as sparks through stubble.
A colleague of mine, who retired after having spent a half-century or more imparting wit and wisdom in the classroom, used to tell me that it was silly to think anyone would remember him once he was gone. Like a pebble dropping down into a well, he'd say, I'll be a momentary ripple or two. After that, nothing. Knowing the legendary status of his skills as a teacher had earned him among generations of grateful undergraduates, I simply refused to believe it. "Why, John," I exclaimed, "your reputation has been positively Homeric around this place. Nobody's going to put out your light." Turns out he was right. All the lights have gone out on his memory. He might just as well have been delivering pizza for all the impact he's had. I bring this up because in class the other day, I asked if anyone had heard of the writer John Cheever, whose stories of love and loss and wistful regret had for years and years endeared him to readers of The New Yorker. But no, they had never heard of him, nor had they heard of John Updike, who made an even bigger and certainly more recent splash. Well, what about Saul Bellow, who copped a Nobel Prize for his stories? Zip. Nada. Well, at least they'd have heard of Faulkner, Fitzgerald, and Hemingway, right? Truth to tell, I was afraid to ask. In fairness, of course, these were among the great roaring lions of secular literature, whose luminosities might not have penetrated the more pious reaches of Orthodox Catholic life. But when asked about equally illustrious authors of Catholic sensibility, Graham Greene or Evelyn Waugh, Walker Percy or J.F. Powers, I was greeted with similarly vacant stares. It was then that I remembered, cutting closer to the bone, the fate of my old friend and mentor, Fritz Wilhelmsen, who had been, without question, the finest teacher I ever knew. It was he who first introduced me to the poetry of the transcendent. For 40 years or more, his teaching style so electrified students that one would think they'd never get over it. But they did, and indeed even his reputation for scholarship and letters, extending far beyond the classroom, has scarcely survived, leaving one to imagine his pebble dropping so soundlessly down the well that no ripple at all would be heard. So where am I going with all this? To some elegiac turn of the road, beyond which lies the anonymity of the grave? Shall I soon be citing lines from Gray's elegy, reminding everyone that the paths of glory lead but to the grave? Nothing new in that. Death will manage to snap us all up in the end. Still, some of us along the way will continue to remember, for a short while anyway, those whose passing leave us feeling a bit bereft. And what if no one else does take notice? Is it not enough that we do? And of course, God. Did he not, after all, form them and us to be imperishable? Of this fact, the Book of Wisdom assures us. Because, we are told, God himself tried them and found them worthy of himself. As gold in the furnace, he proved them, and as sacrificial offerings, he took them to himself. In the time of their visitation, they shall shine and shall dart about as sparks through stubble. They shall judge nations and rule over peoples, and the Lord shall be their king forever. Not a bad public, that. Thanks for listening. This is Regis Martin in search of the still point.
You've been listening to Dr. Regis Martin in search of the still point. For more episodes in this series, visit discerninghearts.com, or you can find it in our free Discerning Hearts app or on many other streaming platforms. Discerning Hearts is a 501c3 nonprofit Catholic apostolate dedicated to evangelization and spiritual formation through the use of new media. To learn how you can support our mission, visit discerninghearts.com.